Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
Visit Elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, your host, and tonight we're going to talk about City Center, downtown Elmhurst. And with us we have two leaders of City Center. We have Jeff Budgell, president of the City Center Board and owner of Architect Studio. And we have Tom Paravola, owner of It's Good to Be King, who is also the executive director of City Center. And gentlemen, welcome to Elmhurst Now.
Thank you.
I want to start out with some boundaries so that we can talk about City Center and get into some questions, hopefully in some depth. And the boundaries is where I'd like to start. The boundaries of City Center are?
The boundaries of City Center from north to south run from North Avenue on the north to approximately the Palmer Drive, York Road intersection on the south, and from the west side of Addison on the west to the east side of the alley just east of York. And then it follows Palmer Drive to a great extent.
Okay. And City Center then itself does in fact encompass properties both on south of the tracks and north of the tracks.
That is correct. Yes, it does.
So, City Center was established in what year?
1995, I believe it was.
1995. Mm-hmm. So City Center and Tax Increment Financing District 1 are synonymous, correct? Or no?
I'll take that one. No, they're not. They're related, but not synonymous. Both were created by the city of Elmhurst, which is important to remember. TIF 1 was created, I believe, in 1994, and that was for economic development purposes in and around the downtown area. City Center was created by the city a year later as a not-for-profit corporation to market and promote the majority of the area that's included in TIF 1, but not the complete area. So they function independently.
Okay. But in general, when people talk about the success of City Center, they are at least in part talking about the success of TIF 1.
Yes, that's fair to say.
Okay. Now, the City Center then, as an independent agency and independent organization, how is it structured? I know you're both leaders of it, you as the staff leader, you as the board leader, but how is the City Center structured?
The City Center is actually run by a board of directors, which is made up of property owners, it's made up of merchants, and it's made up of residential property owners as well. They're elected to the board, and then offices are selected from the board, and there are monthly board meetings. There are committees. Everything runs through the committees up to the board. The board makes decisions and then directs the office. The office executes on all of the programs and different miscellaneous things that are decided by the board.
How does one get to be on the board of City Center?
It's really not too difficult. There's an election process. There aren't really too many people in our elections. It's quite easy. If somebody's interested, they should call the office and speak with Tom. We have an election every year. There are certain, the elections overlap, so everyone's not up at the same time. And there's generally a spot. If not, there are committees that people can become members of and without being elected, just work on a committee and get their ideas out, or at least be a part of the entity.
And the structure of it, in terms of being an independent corporation from the city, having our own board of directors, was something that the city purposefully set up back in 1995. The judgment call was that if there were going to be enhanced services provided for the downtown area, who would be in the best position to judge what those should be to the benefit of the businesses in the area? And city staff made the call at that time, the city council, to say an elected board of representatives from city center merchants, city center and commercial property owners would best know how to apply the funds available and structure the services best for the area compared to City Hall doing that just within City Hall parameters.
So if you own or work or live within the boundaries of City Center, you have not only a stake in, but you're sort of part of the group.
You are automatically in City Center. If you are within the geographic boundaries as a merchant doing business, whatever kind of business, as a commercial property owner or a residential property owner in the complexes that are within City Center, and those complexes are areas that used to be commercial property that residential complexes were built upon. So that would be Market Square, that would also be the Crescent Court complexes. So if you're in those residences, you would be in City Center.
And as the staff, executive director, and the City Center staff is comprised of?
We have 5 people. Most are part-time with the exception of a full-time maintenance employee. So the equivalent of 3 full-time staff people doing marketing and promotion. And as I say, we have a full-time maintenance employee for the area.
Now I know that City Center is, if you will, funded by a special service agreement, special service area, rather. How does that work, number one? And number two, did that come into being at the same time when City Center was created, or was it a process? So I guess the first question would be, how does that work? Special service area.
At the time that the City Center was set up, so was the SSA. It was a process that the city went through and put into place. It is essentially the property owners taxing themselves on their tax bills. They see SSA 6 and 7, and those funds go into City Center to fund the activities. There's actually 2 overlapping SSAs, 6 and 7. One is everybody, and the other is property owners, which they do different things. It's an overlapping SSA system.
Okay, so they are in fact taxing themselves, if you will, for services, for events, for
Correct.
activities.
For services that are in addition to what the city would do. The city would normally provide a base level of services for the area. And in doing this SSA, the property owners have decided they want additional, or the city would like to provide additional services and marketing for the downtown, events, cool cars, things like that add to the ambiance of the downtown.
And by way of example, the way that it actually works is that the city increases the property tax levy applicable to the property within City Center. The commercial property owners may pay that increased levy, or more likely they pass it along to their merchant tenants. And that money that the city levies for that comes from a recommendation from the City Center Board of Directors. So the City Center itself has no legal ability to impose the taxes. That's something we recommend to the city, and then the City Council acts upon that to generate the funding for the area's purposes.
So one of the things that all 3 of us occasionally run into in Elmhurst is the comment by citizenry, others, well, how come they can do fill in the blank downtown, but we can't do it at Spring Road or York and Villette? And I mean, what's the principle? Is the SSA the principal difference between those areas?
That is the main funding difference. That generates the dollars that come in for us to use for the purposes that the city has prescribed for us. Those other areas in town are other shopping services areas. They have no formal organization, and they also have no formal special service area status to generate tax dollars to fund activities. If one of those areas was interested in following the path of City Center, they would go to the city and say, convert us into a special service area, and we want to pay the incremental property taxes to fund those activities, set up an infrastructure like City Center has in terms of corporate governance, and there you would.
Yeah, now I do understand Spring Road had an SSA, but not for as broad a based purposes as
that.
City
I believe
Center
that was
does.
strictly for sidewalks.
Infrastructure improvements,
right,
as I recall.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the city doesn't run City Center, or it does? Or is it something along the lines of both?
The city does not run City Center. The City Center Board of Directors sets policy, sets our budget, is responsible for maintaining the office staff. Having said that, there is all kinds of ongoing interaction. The city manager, the head of visitors and tourism sit on the City Center Board of Directors as ex officio members, as do 4 aldermen, 2 aldermen each from the 1st and 4th wards in which City Center is located. So they are ex officio members. They are involved in everything that we do. We submit our budget annually to the city. The city looks at that budget, and it looks at it, though, only to the extent to be assured that we are spending money according to the purposes prescribed in the implementing agreement that we have with the city.
All right, we've already established that City Center and the SSA are not necessarily synonymous with TIF 1, which is the boundaries as was outlined earlier by you, Tom. Does TIF 1 is not that many years from its expiration. What happens after the TIF goes away?
For City Center, the results of the proceeds from the property tax levies will stay about the same, because currently the city, in using the TIF proceeds, City Center collects under a formula what City Center would get if the City Center Special Service Area tax rates applied to the total equalized assessed value for the area. So the TIF is a structure that doesn't directly impact City Center. When the TIF expires, City Center's revenue, to the extent the City Council acts on it consistent with the past, would stay the same.
Okay. Now I think the belief within Elmhurst is that the 3 TIFs that we have in town, the TIF 1 being essentially City Center, that all 3 of them have been successful in their own ways, that all 3 of them have been good for economic development within Elmhurst. Now, as leaders of City Center, how much of the success, the revitalization, Mayor Marcucci talked often while he was mayor about a clipping that he carried inside his coat pocket, written by the Chicago Tribune, talking about Elmhurst and, if you will, that first western ring of communities in DuPage County sort of disappearing or in decline. And he talked often about the success of the revitalization of downtown Elmhurst. Is it chicken and egg in terms of the TIF with the success of downtown Elmhurst? Is it more than that?
Well, the TIF is a tool used by the city to do development within the downtown. Once the development is in place, it functions with the city center. It has been successful. It's provided a lot of additional residential and commercial opportunities, which all feed together to create City Center. And it's worked and it's been successful. If the TIF hadn't been successful in TIF 1, it probably wouldn't have expanded and had a number of other TIFs with it. So I think that it's a tool that has been worked well for the city, in my opinion.
Well, no, go ahead, Tom.
Well, it's a combination of things. When the TIF was established, it provided the city with dollars to provide incentives to assist in the development of the infrastructure. And what happened over time is more businesses came into the downtown, in part because of those incentives. The York Theater, that revitalization is part of that. And then City Center was layered on then to provide some enhanced services for the area. And we do two different things, two areas of functions. One would be to provide services to enhance the physical environment, and then the second is to market and promote the area. So we layered on, I would say, after the TIF was very helpful in getting the infrastructure in place, but those things work hand in hand after that. Businesses get attracted to come into City Center because of the look of the area that we maintain, and yet the city still will come in and from time to time fund economic development activities through assistance from the TIF funds.
Programs like the retail grant program are TIF programs that the city administers that helps bring merchants in and has been fairly successful as well.
I know that the facade grants.
The facade grant is another
some,
program, yes.
Life safety features
Correct.
are also a part of that. So many people, relatively new, if you will, residents of Elmhurst look at the downtown, and obviously you're very complimentary and very pleased and happy that it is a vibrant area such as it is. It wasn't always that way. And I think the super block, which most people don't even know what the super block was, but the area that now has Chipotle and Meatheads and Walgreens and that was a former Ruby's department store where Buffalo Wild Wings is now, and what people forget that wasn't always there. Tom, you already mentioned the economic development incentives that the city provided to the York Theater that renovated it and turned it into the magnet that it is now. How do the two of you feel about the mix of things in the city center?
The mix of things. I think that as time goes by, the developments change. The super block that you referred to at the time was a big deal. It was a huge. That was one of the first developments that were put in, and by today's standards, it would probably seem underwhelming. Mm-hmm. It's one story. I mean, most everything that is developed now is multiple stories.
Sure.
But that's the progression of development. So as things move along through, as time goes by, development, the idea of what is a correct development, what is appropriate, changes, and we get this kind of an ongoing process of development. You see that with the Han and other developments that are coming in. They're completely different than what would have been considered back then, at the beginning of the TIF.
Well, and as Tom talked about the ebb and flow of businesses, I think I don't believe, with the exception of Walgreens, I don't think there's a single business in the super block that started out in the super block, other than Walgreens.
Well, things change over time, and that's important to remember. The marketplace determines what comes in and out. City Center doesn't determine that. The City of Elmhurst doesn't determine that. Businesses come and go. And when you look at the mix is, we look at it as people will come into City Center, patronize City Center for a combination of things: dining, entertainment, shopping, and then personal and professional services. So there's a variety of things. And when you question the mix, you look at what we have in the past and presently, and I think what you would see is, if you go back 10 years, there was probably more retail than there is now. The retail component has probably gone down a little bit over time, and that's reflective of the economy. The restaurant component has increased substantially, and most people partake of that. The entertainment section has stayed maybe the same, with the exception that the York Theater has expanded tremendously over the years and is a big draw for the area. We have a couple of entertainment venues now where there is music, and that's probably going to expand. And then the services side is where things often get overlooked for what we have down here. Come down on a Saturday morning, and that would be completely on display in terms of how many people come into the downtown area for services. Those may be professional services, lawyers, accountants, architects. They may be personal services, things, barbershops, beauty salons, but also we have a burgeoning fitness niche in town where all kinds of personal studios are in place. And so that's a big piece of what goes on in the downtown area. So it's a whole system of complementary businesses and functions that feeds off itself.
Well, and related to that, and anecdotally, but I heard all during the Great Recession that it was in part that the mix of businesses in Elmhurst allowed us to weather that storm with perhaps a better, a higher residency rate, lower vacancy rate than some of our neighbors did that had either a different mix or a mix that either was affected more by the recession. Now that's an anecdotal comment, but I heard it consistently. Is there a vacancy rate in city center that is sort of seen as normal?
I would say under normal circumstances and when the economy was really going well, we probably ran with a 5%, maybe a little bit less vacancy rate. Right now it's probably in the low to mid-teens. I'm not exactly sure where it's at. But you know, the city center spends upwards of $400,000 a year marketing. You see billboards, there's you know, all these events that go on. And I think that the merchants take note. When we see a store, this recession has been particularly harsh, but typically when a store vacates, there's usually somebody within 4 to 6 months, there's usually somebody there looking at it and moving in. We've been very fortunate. I think that Tom and I both would like to say that City Center plays an important role and has played and will continue to play an important role in creating that environment where the merchants are anxious to come.
Keep that thought because it'll be the lead when we come back. We're going to take a real short break right now. This is Elmhurst Now that you're watching. We're talking about City Center, and we'll be right back.
Have you visited the Elmhurst Public Library lately? The Kids Library is a wonderful place, especially with our many exciting children's programs. The second floor is home to the adult and teen collections. From research to magazines, we've got it. We have more than 80 computers throughout the building. Or bring your own laptop. The entire building has wireless access. Need a quiet place to study? Try our silent study rooms. Book one of our spacious meeting rooms for your group. Our convenient book drop and drive-up window make picking up and returning library materials a breeze. And don't forget, EPL is open 24/7 online at elmhurstpubliclibrary.org.
The Churchville Schoolhouse opens the door to the best education in history. Visitors to the Churchville Schoolhouse take a step back in time to watch history unfold in a restored National Register of Historic Places property that dates to the Civil War era. Students of today walk in the footsteps of local farm children from the early days of DuPage County for an authentic living history experience led by a schoolmarm of the early 1900s. A visit to the Churchville Schoolhouse is hands-on, educational, and fun. Participants use slate chalkboards and McGuffey readers for the day's lessons. And children will be asked to follow proper classroom etiquette. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are practiced, and students test their skills during an old-fashioned spelling bee. And of course, no school day is complete without recess featuring games of the early 1900s. The schoolhouse is a popular place for scouts and day camps too. Group visits can also be arranged for service clubs, tour groups, and other adult organizations. The Churchville Schoolhouse Living History program is operated by the Elmhurst Historical Museum. Call the museum today to book a field trip or find out more information. Call 630-833-1457 or visit our website at churchvilleschoolhouse.org. The Churchville Schoolhouse is waiting to open the doors for your school or community group. Plan a memorable learning experience today for the best education in history.
Welcome back. This is Elmhurst Now. We're talking with Jeff Budgell and Tom Paravola about City Center, downtown Elmhurst, something that everyone in Elmhurst is very proud of. You know, we talked about City Center and how it's structured and governed and a little bit about what it does. We alluded to events and you know, a full-time maintenance man and this kind of thing. But how exactly do the decisions get made about what gets funded and how much it's funded with and what happens and what doesn't?
I'll take that. Take for an example a new event that might happen. That would start with somebody having an idea, telling it to the office or coming up. It would end up at the marketing committee. The marketing committee would work on it with staff. They'd develop it to a certain point, and then it would rise to the board. The board would then take a vote on it if they wanted it to happen. If it was approved by the board, staff would then make it happen.
But in the end, City Center is still in the city. So if you want to do something, you still have to go through all the normal approvals, and the city council still is, you know, the ultimate authority. Correct? Incorrect?
Well, let me pick up on that, because City Center is part of the city of Elmhurst. The streets are maintained by the city. City zoning rules apply. City police patrol the city center. Everything is still under control of the city. City Center provides some additional functions beyond what the city would provide to any other area. And those things, as I mentioned earlier, fall into two camps. One is services we provide to enhance the physical environment. And those kinds of things are the full-time maintenance employee that we have who provides enhanced grounds maintenance for the area, extra trash pickup, extra sidewalk cleaning. You know, this in the fall, as you would have seen, picking up leaves that fall from the streetscape trees. We also provide enhanced snow removal in the winter. So coming up starting December through February, March, whenever, if there are certain levels of snowfall or ice on the sidewalks, we come in and hire an outside vendor and do some enhanced snow and ice removal beyond what the city would do, which is normally one pass with a sweeper that they have. So we provide an additional service to that. The planters that you see around the city center area, there are 300 plus of those. Those are owned by the city, but City Center arranges for the plants to go in those and rotate year round. And then lastly, the holiday decorations around town, which people will see coming up in very short order, are City Center's responsibility. So the tree lights, for instance, we have somewhere approaching 200 streetscape trees in the area that we put the holiday lights on, different colors and different years. Those will be going up shortly. And also the displays you see in the City Center Plaza, in the fountain when it's dry in the winter, those are created by vendors hired by City Center. So those are things that we do in addition to what's otherwise done by the city for streetscaping, things like that. On the marketing and promotion side, we look to do things that make the downtown a destination for consumers. And there's really two pieces to that. One, we try to increase the public's awareness of City Center and their image of City Center, their impressions of City Center. And then we try to actually do things to bring people into the downtown to give our merchants a chance to have them patronize their businesses. So that would be brand advertising, that would be staging events, that would be different marketing initiatives and promotions that we undertake, all intended to bring people into the area as a whole.
So big question, what color are the lights going to be this year, Tom?
Everybody always asks that. This year they will be a traditional white. Last year they were an alternating red and white.
You've got to ask these questions when you get the opportunity.
And there are a lot of trees.
Well, and I think it's important though for our viewers, the audience, if you will, to understand the high degree of enhancements that City Center does provide within its boundaries. It's part of the reason that, if you will, some other areas of the city don't necessarily look the same. Doesn't mean that they don't look good, but they're a different area from City Center. They're governed differently. They're structured differently. They have different sources of revenue. Now, I want to go back to the TIF as an economic tool, which obviously we've all agreed was instrumental in the success of City Center. I think I think it's probably fair to say that the successes of TIF 1 led to the city being more open to the Lake Street TIF, which was TIF number 2, and the whole redevelopment of Elmhurst Crossing, which is St. Charles Road, and Route 83, and the recent approval of TIF 4, which is the North York TIF, which is just getting underway, but a nice shot in the arm with Mariano's. Lessons learned from TIF 1 that apply to the other TIFs going forward, and particularly to TIF 4, just getting started?
Well, again, the city center doesn't. We don't control. We are under the TIF, and we benefit from when a building goes up, but we don't administer it. We don't approve anything under it. So it's a little difficult to say as far as what's worked. Help me here, Tom.
The city sorts through which economic development efforts it supports through the TIF dollars. They may come to and do come to and discuss with the city center board different assessments that we have, and we would offer opinions as an entity, which is always something to, Jeff's opinion as an individual doesn't control. We look at that as an organization representing we have 260 merchant members, about 80 different commercial property owners and the 3 residential properties. So as a whole, we may offer input to the city, but the city decides which incentives to pursue. And we would look at it and say, obviously it's been successful for the downtown area. It's contributed to it. All these things work together. There's no reason not to think that won't apply to the other areas. But it's a question for the city and the city council to really sort through.
Speaking of the city council and sorting through things, the city center's position on the Addison deck. I know that the board has taken a position. That doesn't mean that it can't take other positions, but the current position of the city center board in regard to the Addison deck?
Well, the city center board has on several occasions made known its support for development in the downtown. We have not, though, taken a position on either any particular development that's come forth as far as Addison is concerned. We're supportive of parking. We're very supportive of parking. We're very supportive of the retail element on the development. And we're supportive of it being a good-looking building, an aesthetic building that works. As far as the particulars, how high, what big, how much retail, it's not a position for us to take. But we have in the past supported development in general, and more specifically been supportive of Addison, again, in terms of a retail street front and as much parking as is feasible, keeping in mind the aesthetics of it. But development is good for City Center. The board believes in general, and we're supportive of it.
And we would say that that's a key location for a parking structure, and it's a unique opportunity to put that kind of structure right in the middle of the downtown area. It would support activity going on York, including the theater and some possible entertainment venues, and it would also be directly and immediately supportive of development along Addison. So I think the City Center Board looks at that and says the city has done a very good job of identifying and putting itself in a position to put a parking deck somewhere for consumer and city center employee parking. This is not for commuter parking to support the train lines. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and we encourage the city to move forward as fast as it can with the project.
Similarly, the Hahn Street development, which is in the most early stages of City Council review, having received 5 proposals, the City Council's narrowed it down to 3. They will be considering that the presentations from those 3 in the next several weeks. The Hahn Street project is officially in TIF 4, and while not getting into the logistics of the TIFs, the impact of a potential Hahn Street project in general, how it's being presented on the city center itself? Just some opinions is.
The Hahn Street project is probably one of the more important projects that the city center would be facing, or the city of Elmhurst for a project within the city center. It is a very large piece of property that is, for all practical purposes, it's abandoned. There's nothing on it. There's no activity on it, and with Hahn developed, there'll be a new vibrancy brought to the north end of the city center that will help connect the north end to the central part. And it's very badly needed, and we're really anxious to see that development go forward.
Why do you think downtown city center has become such a magnet for not only the people who live in Elmhurst, but people outside of Elmhurst? You hear all the time about the vibrancy of the downtown and the friendliness and attractiveness, and why do you feel that that's occurred, and how powerful is it in your opinion? You both, you own a building downtown, you have a store downtown, you're both involved with city center. What's the secret that's making all this work?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. We have a nice blend of differing types of merchants, and by that I mean dining, entertainment, retail, as well as services. And so there's a blend. You can come down and do a lot of things. And a lot of the things that you can come down and do are not necessarily things you can get going to the mall or going along 22nd. There's some things that are relatively unique to the downtown, and it's very accessible and very friendly, as you would say. And I think that all works together in terms of we work to have the area be vibrant, be attractive, be prosperous, and that then feeds on itself. And then we do draw from outside Elmhurst. I don't want to minimize that. It's not only people within Elmhurst coming to the downtown, which they often view as a focal point going back years and years. You'll hear people say, I'm going to go uptown. It's downtown now. The city center name is sometimes misleading. That was what it was named when it was started. But we also draw in from other communities, and that shouldn't be minimized, and that's the impact of the theater, but also a number of our businesses have a metropolitan area draw, and we're centrally located. So people can do that. People can easily come from other communities, and we regularly draw from other communities.
That has to help with the vacancy rate we talked about too, the filling of empty spaces in a relatively quick period of time. Obviously, depending on the overall state of the economy, but I think it's fair to say that the city of Elmhurst, with its very diverse economic development areas, there's a distinguished and well-defined downtown, which is somewhat unique, not certainly completely unique, in the western suburbs. But then on top of it, there are other areas. What synergy is there between the economic development areas within Elmhurst, the various retail areas? A successful city center makes possible a more successful York and Valletta, a more successful Spring Road. Yes, no, it's not your primary task, obviously, but does it happen?
Well, it's not our task, but I think it does happen because you go to different areas in Elmhurst for different things. You would go to City Center for certain services, certain shopping, certain dining, certain entertainment with the theater. You would go to other areas in Elmhurst for different services, different retail, different functions, and that's as it should be. Areas do different things. When we structure our activities, we take into account, for instance, what might be going on at Spring Road or what might be going on in York and Vallette, and we try to be complementary to that and certainly not in conflict with those activities. I think everybody proceeds on the same way. So it all benefits the community together. And when you look at City Center, the city deserves a ton of credit as a municipality for thinking ahead and setting up our structure as well as our funding. Other communities look at what we have and the momentum that we've built over the 20 years and say, right, Elmhurst really was very far-sighted to set this up and think this through and have this in place.
So what's the future look like? I mean, what are aspirations that City Center has for itself going out 3 years, 5 years?
Well, I think it feeds into what we try to do, which is to continue to develop and maintain a prosperous, attractive, vibrant downtown. And when you look at that in today's current environment, the economy certainly has been a difficult thing for a number of years. We have some vacancies now, and that happens in the normal flow of things. To go ahead forward, I think we need to fill those vacancies, and we will. And that'll happen for a couple different reasons. The city will be very helpful in economic development activity to fill those. But also the look and feel of the area. If you talk to the commercial property owners, they will tell you when they bring tenants or prospective tenants through, they'll look at the planters, they'll look at the banners, they'll look at the infrastructure, they look at everything we do, and they look at it and say, hey, this is a place we want to be. So that builds on itself, so that will fill in. And then I think the real aspirations would be the projects that are pending will be enormously beneficial to the area and will feed into the whole structure of the area. The Hahn Street project would be number one because it brings residential units into the area, which are consumers supporting the downtown who want to be in the downtown. It brings additional ground floor storefront space, whether that's retail or services, into the area. And it fills in an enormous hole up in the northern end of the area. It will also give us public space to stage events and things. So that's an enormous project and something to really look forward to for the area.
There's a lot that's going to happen in the next 3 years. Hahn being one, Addison, there'll be other development as the economy improves. The vacancies will fill. It's a very promising time. I think that 3 years from now there'll be an even better city center.
We're coming into the holiday season, which is not only big for retailers, but big for restaurants, big for practically every kind of business throughout the city, but we're talking about City Center. Special things that are coming up that you want to share and get a word in on?
The holiday decorations will all be coming into play in the next few weeks, towards the end of November, around Thanksgiving weekend. The lights will go on the trees, the holiday displays will go up, holiday material will go in the planters, the banners will change, the kiosk. Then also on the event side, we have the city tree lighting event. This year will be on Saturday, November 30th, following Thanksgiving. The mayor will come out, welcome Santa Claus to the holiday tree lighting.
He's coming back again?
He's coming back again. He will light the tree, and then after that we will have a sing-along at one of the downtown locations. And then in December, the first 2 weekends, we have shopping events going on, and you can go onto our website, elmhurstcitycenter.com, and look at those, and those will be promoted in the newspapers and whatnot. So a lot of times will come up, and it's a very busy time for the area, as you say, not only for people shopping, but also for people coming to the restaurants, people come to the theater for the holiday movies, people come all over, and to be honest, many people come to see the holiday displays we create, particularly in the City Center fountain. We have a very striking display that's gone up the last several years, and many people just take a walk downtown and walk around and appreciate the area, as well as shopping and eating.
How far in advance does the City Center staff and board think about the holiday season, and not just the holiday season, but the other promotions and events? How far out are you planning?
We are a year out. We are currently finishing our budget process for the 2014 calendar year, and that's setting the slate of events for the next year. That's looking at our budgeting for holiday decorations in the 2014 holiday season. We look ahead, and we have to do that because we are supporting a large area. As I said, we have 260 merchants, 80 different commercial property owners. When we go plant the planters, there are over 300 planters in the area. When we light the trees, there are almost 200 trees. There are 150 light poles with banners. So these things are all expensive undertakings. We need to contract with people to get this done. So we're a year out on the planning already.
Last question for both of you. Magic wand. Don't have one on me, but if I did, I'd give you each a magic wand. You can change one thing instantly in City Center. What is it?
Hahn would be developed. That will be huge for City Center. That'll be a massive undertaking, but it'll be a wonderful thing finished, no matter what developer does it.
Absolutely. It would bring balance and increased activity to the whole area.
I thank you both for joining me on Elmhurst Now. I'm quite certain that our audience knows a lot more about City Center than they did going in, even if it's just to know the leaders of City Center. So thank you both for joining me.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I've been talking with Jeff Budgell and Tom Paravola, two of the leaders of downtown Elmhurst, the City Center that we're all so happy with. I'm Ken Bartels. This has been Elmhurst Now. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
We live in some of the best communities in Illinois. We care about our neighbors. We work hard to preserve our quality of life. But there's something we forget about in Elmhurst. A river runs through it, and it's up to us to protect it. Our storm drains flow to Salt Creek, and that means our harmful waste does too. So try using fewer chemicals on your lawn. Avoid leaking fluids from cars. And grow native flowers and plants to absorb more rainwater. Don't muddy the waters. Do your part to clean up Salt Creek.